Hello, I'm Elizabeth Hackford and I'm the Law of Attraction Lady. Thanks for joining me for this video. If you've got a big life decision to make, then stay tuned because I've got 5 hot tips that will help you make that tough decision. And the first tip is this. Once upon a time, I used to regularly consult with an Anglican Episcopalian priest seeking advice, and often I would have big life decisions to make. And one of the things he always said to me, and it always resonated, and it was something I never forgot, he said that when you have to make a big decision, you don't actually always have to make the decision straight away. You can just let things unfold. And he said to me something that's so simple and yet it's so profound. He said, just go with the flow. Because what happens if you haven't got to make an immediate decision? Sometimes things turn up unexpectedly and the decision makes itself. So very often it's good to just go with the flow and see what happens. And the second tip is what I call the eeny, meeny, miny, mo trick. Now, when we were children, we used to do this rhyme.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by its toe. If it hollers, let it go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, you are not it.
And for example, we'd be choosing who was going to start to play a game of tag, or we would use it to choose our favourite chocolate. When we were children at home, our parents allowed us to have one chocolate after dinner, and we'd usually have the Quality Streets, and my favourite too were the Mercedes-Benz and the hazelnut caramel, and I couldn't decide between the two, so I would do an eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And what would happen is that when it fell to the Mercedes-Benz or when it fell to the hazelnut caramel, I would have an instant reaction of either feeling pleased or disappointed. And that immediately told me which chocolate I really wanted. So you can sometimes do a form of the eeny, meeny, miny, mo trick. And here's tip number 3. Tip number 3 follows on a little bit in the way of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, is that sometimes you have the luxury of being able to make a decision and then changing your mind. Now, it's not always the case, but a classic example was way back in the day when I was in my mid-20s and I was working in financial services, and I had a fantastic opportunity to take a really great job at a prestigious firm in London, or move overseas to Tokyo and take up a job with another firm in Tokyo. And I had this big decision and I had to make the decision. And in those days, I used to read the Bible quite regularly. And it just so happened that the Bible passage that I was reading that day that I finally had to make a decision was 2 Corinthians chapter 1. Now, in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8, Paul talks to the Corinthians about the troubles he had in Asia. And so I thought to myself, almost dropping my Bible, well, I should go to the job in London. I shouldn't go to Asia. And so I made that decision largely based on what I'd read in the Bible. And I told everybody that was what I was going to do. And I confirmed with the London firm. I spoke to the manager who'd interviewed me. We were quite good friends. And I said, I'm going to take the job. Thank you very much. I hadn't signed anything, but in my mind, that was it. The decision was made. And I went to sleep that night and I was very restless. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, I think I've made the wrong decision. And I consulted my Bible again and I reread that passage. And it goes on to say that Paul really was glad that he'd had troubles in Asia because it made him more dependent on the Lord. And I thought, this is God telling me I should go to Asia because I will learn to trust in him. And so I changed my mind, but I had to go back to my friend. I've said, I'm really sorry, something's happened. I've had to change my mind. So if you have the luxury of being able to change your mind, sometimes by making the decision, you actually realize whether or not it's the right or wrong decision for you. And if you're lucky enough, you can backtrack and go in the other direction, as I was able to do. And I did move to Tokyo. I since went back to England, then went to Dubai. Anyway,
That's irrelevant.
Now, tip number 4 is sometimes you don't have the luxury of time to let the decision make itself, and you don't have the luxury of being able to change your mind once you've made the decision. Once you've made that decision, there's no going back. Will you take the red pill or the blue pill? Typically, if you've got to make a decision like this, you'll be writing down the pros and cons of each decision. Good thing to do, but sometimes I think it's good to just put all of that to one side and just say, if I had to make the decision right now, right this second, what decision would I make? And that's going really with your gut instinct. You'll have heard this before, but if you have to make a decision in the next 24 hours, make the decision now and see what you say to yourself that you should do. Because 9 times out of 10, that will be the same decision that you make and the same decision that is right for you. And my 5th tip is this: if you've got to make a decision, you haven't got the luxury of time, you can't change your mind, it's a one-way decision only, and you cannot really feel in your gut what it is you should do, then go and visit what I call an imaginary council. Now, this is something that's come straight out of Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich. Fantastic book. If you've not read Think and Grow Rich, I highly recommend this book. It's full of really great, pertinent life advice, and it talks a lot about the energy and belief, and the law of attraction is in there. It's the PhD, really, of the law of attraction. And there's a link in the description below to find that book. So Napoleon Hill came up with this concept of the imaginary council. Now, Napoleon Hill ended up having about 200 or 300 people on his council. I've got about 6 at the moment, and they're basically figures or leaders or great gurus from the past that you look up to and respect and admire. You can even have family members on your imaginary council, and you basically just imagine those people sitting in a room around a conference table and you sitting at the foot of the table and seeking their advice on your decision. So, for example, in my imaginary council, I've got Madonna, Jesus Christ, Beethoven, Queen Elizabeth I, Esther Hicks, and Winston Churchill. Now, of course, many of those people have passed away. Some of them are still alive today. But basically, all of these people are people that I really admire and respect. I go round the table one at a time, asking their advice, and they all share their ideas. And what's happening is I'm projecting their personality onto them. And what they say is actually very pertinent to that individual. So even though it's not that they're really there in physical reality talking to you, it's as if they are. And you just imagine this imaginary council in your mind, and you consult all of these figureheads. And I guarantee that they will give you some really prudent, sound advice. Finally, I want to just say that there was another piece of advice that I got from somebody that was so profound and so helpful. I was at an Anglican church in Dubai, and there was this priest called Father Tim. I was trying to decide whether or not to stay in Dubai or move back to Tokyo. And I was really trying to weigh up the options, and I really didn't know what was the right thing for me. And I had been to my imaginary council. Anyway, I was actually sitting down in the room with this priest, Father Tim. And what he said to me was so profound. He said, "Elizabeth, there is no right or wrong decision. Both of the decisions will take you on a life trajectory that will be equally blessed and rich in experience. So don't stress too much about your decision. Know that either decision is a right decision and will take you on life adventures that you will just not know about, and you will be blessed. So be bold, make that decision, and don't stress too much about whether it's the right one or the wrong one, because both decisions are right."